this is quite a big topic. So what I'm going to aim to do is to give you a bit of an introduction to verbs and some of the kind of tricky elements to using verbs that you need to watch out for. The aim of this really is to kind of give you a bit of a foothold, so something to just sort of get you started with using verbs. As I'm sure you're all aware, English and maths are quite different topics. Maths is quite concrete, like you normally have something is wrong or it's right. English can be a little bit more murky, and verbs is one of these kind of areas where there is some debate. But like I say, what I'm going to do is give you some sort of basic rules that give you a bit of a foothold, kind of a starting point with working with verbs, and then obviously you can sort of explore things from there. Cool. So yeah, this is verbs in context. Let's jump to the second slide. And what I want you to do before we begin is think about verbs or your knowledge of verbs and using verbs in your own writing, and give me a score from 1 to 10, which gives me an idea of how confident you feel at using verbs. So in the chat box, just give me a number from 1 to 10. Steve is kind of 5. Hazel, we've got a 4. Nige, 4. Who else have we got on here? There we go, we've got Joe as well, and Sheila as well. Excellent. You are 4 and Joe, you are a 6. Excellent, thank you very much. And there we go. So obviously you all have practice using the chat box as well. So as we go through it, when you're giving me answers to the questions, just put it in the chat box. That's probably the best way to sort of go, because we've got, well, we will certainly have throughout the rest of the day kind of quite big groups. Obviously, if you want to turn your microphone on and ask a question, then do that as well. You're absolutely more than welcome to do that. Okay, good. So let's get into the session. So before we begin, what I want you guys to do is just tell me anything you can think of about verbs. So what do you know about verbs? Give me some facts, some information, anything you know. Put it in the chat box. So what is a verb, I guess, is the first question. And again, we are going to cover this in the session. So if you're not sure, you can put not sure. But just to give me an idea of what you guys already know. And you're absolutely right, Joe. Yep. So verbs are action words, or certainly some words are action verbs. So that's really good. Doing words, exactly. That kind of fits with action words. Words to describe an action, good. Exactly. Okay, great. Yeah, that is the main thing really to be aware of with verbs. What I'm going to do is just reveal this sentence down here. So it says Sam plays football. Which of those words is a verb? Exactly, yeah, good. So you can see that the middle word is my verb, so it's plays. And as you said earlier, so a verb, most commonly a verb is an action word, absolutely. You can see also here that the verb is in the middle of the sentence. And most commonly that is where you will find your verb. Another thing that you're going to need to know for this session is what the subject is. Which of these words, Sam or football, is the subject, do you think? Exactly, nice. Yeah, perfect. So the subject of our sentence is Sam. And so the subject, this is the person or thing that is doing the action in the sentence. So your subject is the person or thing that is doing the action in the sentence. So Sam is doing the action, and our verb is the action itself. So Sam plays football. And these are the two things we're going to be looking at most in this session. So the way that subjects and verbs, the way that they kind of work together. We've put action words. We've said verbs are action words. So we can put a few examples up here. So run, jump, eat, example. So they're all different action words, but sometimes verbs can also be what we call being words. So you can see here, we've now got the word is. So this is also a verb, but this is a being word. So verbs can be action words or doing words. They can also be being words as well. So that's just a little introduction to verbs. And what we'll do is obviously look at these things in more detail next. So in this session, we're going to begin. We've basically got two main objectives. We're going to start off looking at verb tense consistency. And then we're going to move on to looking at subject-verb agreement. So these two things sound pretty scary, but as we go through them, you'll kind of see that they're not. And actually, it kind of makes quite a lot of logical sense, these names, when we look at them in more detail. So the first thing we're going to look at is how to identify verb tense consistency, or basically how to make sure our verbs are used consistently when we write. So on the left, it says verb. A verb is either a doing word or a being word. You can see underneath we've got examples. So he is at home. This is our being word. Asneskia and Sarkan enjoy tennis. So this is our doing word. So examples of doing words might be run, jump, eat, these types of words. Give me some more examples for being words. So is a being word, but what else do we have? So we'll put is in the list. Are, absolutely, good. And there's one more that we use quite a lot. Begins with an A. If I was to say I, what would come next? I am, exactly, good. So these are what we call the verb to be. So is, am, and are, or is, are, and am. What would be, so this word here, Sam is a teacher. This is the present tense. And you can see over here, it says verbs can be written in 3 tenses. What word would I use if I wanted to say that in the past tense? Exactly, yeah, good. And what about the past tense of are? What would that be? Yeah, good. So that would be were. So is one person. So Sam is or Sam was. We are or we were. Exactly. So when we use verbs, we can write verbs in different tenses. And there's actually 3 tenses that we use in English. What are the 3 tenses? So I've given you 2 of them already. We've got the past, and what are the others? Exactly, yeah. So the last one is the future. So we've got the past, the present, and the future. And the key thing about verbs is if you want to change the tense of your sentence, you change the verb. That's how we change tense. So that's why verbs are really, really important when we write. And you can see an example here. We've got Chiara was in Italy. So the verb is in green. Chiara is in Italy. The verb is in green again. And Chiara is going to Italy. You can see that the only thing that changes in the sentence is the verb, because that is the way that we set the tense. And there is a lot we could talk about in terms of tense. So when we think of past tenses, there's like 4 different past tenses. Same again with the present, and there's about 2 or 3 different ways of forming the future tense. That's not something we're going to go into But it is a good thing to be aware of when you're writing that there are different tenses for different situations, and there's different forms of past, present or future. Let's just have a look at this next one here. So the company were expanding. How would I write that in the present? Exactly, Stephen Hazel. Yeah, spot on. So the company are expanding is what you would write in here. And how would I write that in the future? Yeah, actually a couple of ways to do it. Like I said, there is different versions of past, present or future tenses. So the company will be expanding, or we could say the company is going to expand. So again, there's different forms of future tense. But like I say, I won't go into why we use those in this lesson, but that is certainly something which you could explore if you want to. All right, excellent. So verbs are doing words or action words. They're also being words. Verbs are really important because they set the tense when you write sentences. Verbs normally appear in the middle of your sentence. There obviously are exceptions to that, but again, that's not something we're going to go into at this point. So let's have a look at this then. One thing we have to be aware of when we're using verbs, especially when we're using tense, is to make sure that when we write a sentence that the tenses we use, they work together, they make sense. They don't always have to be the same tense, but you do have to check for meaning to make sure you're not kind of confusing the reader. I'll give you an example. So every time the customer visited, there we go. I filled in the gaps. What do we think about that? Does that make sense? No, it doesn't. Exactly. So you can see that's quite confusing because I've got the past tense and then I jump to the future tense, and that doesn't really make sense. So what would I put in this gap, or what could I put in this gap? Exactly, yeah. So this makes a lot more sense because we've got every time the customer visited, so we've got the past, she complained about everything. Again, we've got the past. So keeping it in one tense makes a lot more sense. Like I say, sometimes you can mix tenses, but you have to be very careful that you're not confusing the meaning. So let's look at these examples at the bottom. Let's do number one together, first of all. So what would we change in this sentence to make it consistent, to make sure that our tenses are consistent? Yeah, good, Nige, well done. So Stan started his shift. So you can see that we've got this in the past. And therefore, to make it sort of really nice and easy to understand, we also want to make sure that the other words are in the past as well. So you can see that this one is currently in the present. So I'm going to change that to replied. So Stan started his shift, replied to his emails and organised the rota. So we've now got it all in the past tense. So have a look at the second one, and we're going to do the same again. What would we change in that sentence to make sure we've got a good verb tense consistency? Excellent. Well done, everyone. Really fast. Good stuff. So she fully intended to file the report, but she forgot. We need to change something else as well. What else do we need to change? Exactly, yeah. So again, we've got another verb here. We've got goes. We're currently writing in the past, so we want that to be in the past as well. So that's what we mean by verb tense consistency, making sure that you're using consistent use of tense in your sentences. Okay, let's have a look at these two questions quickly. The one on the left, what tense is this sentence written in? So I'm going to work from home tomorrow. What tense is that? It is the future, exactly. Good one, and Joe. And Shadida as well, very quick, good, excellent. So that's the future tense. And then we've got a longer sentence here. We could fill this in a number of ways. We could actually use all three. We could use the past, we could do it in the present or the future. But let's do this in the past tense. In fact, no, let's do it in the present tense, sorry. So if we're going to fill these gaps in using the present tense, what are we going to write in these gaps? Good. So we're going to say there are 2 engineers working at the facility today. They are doing work on the lightning mast. I can see we've got 3 R's. Yeah, exactly. So they are experts. And so well, and Shadida, I see you've got that really quick as well. And Joe as well, and Steve, excellent. And so I am confident. Good. So you can see, again, another example of how we want to make sure that our tenses are consistent. All right, really, really good. I'm going to give you a practice question. So have a look at these 4 examples of sentences. Which one is, or which one has been written correctly? So just put A, B, C, or D in the chat box, and we'll see if you all agree. All right, that looks pretty unanimous. Everyone has gone for C. Yeah, and you're absolutely spot on. It is C, because you can see I will be doing a HIT class today, and so I will be tired. So we've got a consistent use of the future tense. So there we go. That is what we mean by verb tense consistency, keeping the tenses you use consistent within a sentence. Right, so that's the first thing we're going to look at. Has anyone got any questions before we move to the second objective? No? All right, excellent, good. So yeah, so watch out for the way you use verb tense when you're writing, especially obviously for your writing task and your functional skills. It is something that the examiners will be looking to make sure you're doing kind of accurately. All right, so the second and last part of the session, this is to do with subject-verb agreement. So basically what we're doing here is making sure that our subject and our verb agree. So over here, you can see I've got a table. The first column says subject, and I've got 2 examples, and then it says verb. These are our doing words, verb, being words, and also I've put another one in here, have and has, just for an example. Let's look at this top sentence. So here we've got the subject Anna, and I've written a sentence, Anna eats breakfast. How many subjects have I got in that sentence? How many people or things is the subject about? So this sentence at the top, Anna eats breakfast. How many people is this sentence about? How many subjects? Yeah, just the one, just Anna, exactly. So we would say that this is a singular because there's one subject. And you can see here that we've got Anna eats. So it uses an S. We can compare that to the next example, the dogs eat. In this sentence, we don't use an S on the word eats. How many subjects have we got in this sentence? Yeah, exactly, multiple. Yeah, good. So we could say it's plural. The dogs means there's more than one subject. So we can see here we've got Anna eats with an S. So if it's a singular subject, we use an S. If it's plural, we don't use an S. So that's, again, quite a subtle thing, something you do quite naturally when you write, but it is a good thing to look out for, because, again, it's a mistake that a lot of people make quite easily when they're writing if they're not concentrating. It also affects the verb to be. You can see Anna is, or we would say the dogs are. It also affects have and has. So Anna has and the dogs have. So the verb you use depends a lot on the subject you use. So what we're looking at here, you can see in red, these are called nouns. These are naming words. Sometimes we like to mix up our sentences and not use the same word over and over again. So what you can do sometimes is you can substitute your noun for a pronoun. And just here, I've got a list of different pronouns. So I, you, we, they, he, she, and it. So if I didn't want to use Anna in the sentence, which of these words could I substitute for Anna? Yeah, exactly. So I could say she eats breakfast. Exactly. And what about the dogs? What word could I substitute for the dogs? They. Exactly. Good. So, and depending on which pronoun your subject is, your verb is going to change. And you can see here, so I eat, you eat, we eat, they eat, he or she eats. So he or she has an S, and it eats, again, with an S. This is the same with the verb to be. You can see how they also change when you change the pronoun. And again, you can see how have changes. So again, with the last two, you've got has instead of have. So this is something to watch out for in your writing, just to make sure you're not making any of these kind of mistakes. So we'll have a little practice, but remember, the thing to remember is if it's singular, it uses an S. If it's plural, it doesn't. So she eats has an S because it's singular, or they eat doesn't have an S because it's plural. So let's have a look over here. What have I got under there? Oh, okay. Right. So here's an example sentence. So national insurance contributions and income tax. Are we going to say is or are taken out of my wages every month? What do you think? You can put a little clue up here. Sam eats. The dogs eat. There we go. Just as a little reminder in the corner. So are we going to use is or are? What do we think? So how many subjects have we got here? How many things are we talking about? Two, exactly. So we've got national insurance contributions. We've also got income tax. So remember, Sam eats, that was singular. So if it's singular, you use an S. If it's plural, if there's more than one, we don't use an S. Obviously, this is the verb to be, so it's slightly different. So, but we have got plural, so we're going to use is or are. Exactly, Debbie. Yeah, we're going to use are. So national insurance contributions and income tax are taken out of my wages every month because this is a plural. This has two subjects, so it's plural. Okay, let's try the next one. So the group finish or the group finishes at 3 p.m. What do you think? Yeah, well done. Good. So remember, if it's singular, it has an S. Sam eats. We've got one group, so obviously that's singular. So we're going to say the group finishes at 3 p.m. Exactly. Good. And what about the last one? Alma and Frank need or Alma and Frank needs? Exactly. Well done. Good. Because it's plural, we've got two subjects. We've got Alma and we've got Frank. And therefore, if it's plural, we don't have an S. So we're going to say Alma and Frank need to attend the meeting. Really good. Okay, so we've only got a few minutes, so we won't do these ones. We'll jump straight onto the last question and see how you get on. So again, we've got 4 options. I want you to tell me which of these sentences has been written in the correct form. Do you think it's A, B, C, or D? So it's a tricky one, so think it over carefully. Okay, so Nige, Debbie, and Steve, and Joe, and Hazel, good. Let's give Shadida a second, so we've gone for C. Okay, so remember, what we need to think about is, have we got singular? So Sam eats. So with a singular, we have an S. Or is it plural, which means we don't use an S? It says the 3 classes. So is this singular or plural? It's plural, exactly, because we've got 3 of them, haven't we? 3 classes. So therefore, if it's plural, we're not going to use an S. So you're all absolutely right. We use need without an S. So it's going to be A. Excellent stuff. Well done. And there you go. So that's what we mean by subject-verb agreement, making sure that the verb agrees with the subject we've chosen to use. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to finish off there. That is a lot of information for 25 minutes. So hopefully your brains are all feeling fine. So first of all then, let's have a quick recap. So what is a verb? Good. So it's an action word. Or what other type of word can it be? Sorry, my fingers are not typing very well today. So it's an action word or a doing word. It can also be let's just get some examples of an action word. So run, jump, eat. So the other one we want is a being word. What do I mean by a being word? Give me some examples of verbs that would be being words. Yeah, good. So was, is, am, are, exactly. So verbs can be action words, they can be being words. Why are verbs really important in sentences? What kind of job do they do, other than tell us about the action? Yeah, good. So verbs set the tense. Exactly. Whereabouts in a sentence do we find verbs most commonly? Do they normally at the start, the end, or in the middle? Yeah, exactly. Good. Excellent stuff. And so here we go. So thinking about subject-verb agreement. So this is the complicated bit. If it's a singular verb, if it's a singular subject, S, or do we don't use an S? Good. So if it's singular, then we do use an S. So we're going to say Sam eats. Good. And if it's plural, subject, we don't use an S. So for example, the dogs. Good. There we go. So we've got verb tense consistency. So make sure you use your tenses consistently, and then also watch out for subject verb agreement as well in your writing to make sure it stays accurate. So we've done all of these things in the session. So we've looked at verb tense consistency, and we have looked at subject-verb agreement, and we've also done a little bit of revision as well. So really, really good. Just to finish off, think about the session. This isn't a score of how good the session is. It's really just a reflection of how you feel, sort of how confident you personally feel about the things we've talked about. And this will just give us an idea really sort of where you are with this, whether you might need more support or whether you feel really confident with it. So have a little kind of reflect on the things you've learned in this session and give me a score from 1 to 10. So how are you kind of feeling about this stuff? So Hazel an 8, excellent. Nige 9, brilliant. Steve is an 8, fantastic. Andreas 7 or an 8. So we picked up a few extra people. Joe a 10, awesome. Shadida, you're a 9. Try and get everybody. I think that might be everyone. Good. Okay, lovely. So future learning. So we have recorded the session. So obviously we can send you this session if you want to do, if you want to kind of revisit it at all. Also, you've all got access to Skills Forward. So do have a look on Skills Forward and kind of look at this again, just to keep it in your head. And then the most obvious thing is that we've got more bite-sized workshops coming up throughout the day. So jump on some more of those to sort of obviously do more English and maths practice.